We were very fortunate that we had initiated this conversation with Wake County just at the time the pandemic hit. And of course, our meeting had to be canceled and no plans could be made because the county had to get involved in developing the procedures and how we were going to move forward. That's when I first met our presenter today, Mr. Kinrade, and I had already met the county manager who was deputy at that time, I believe, and has since become the county manager. So we have been having the conversations when we had 4 years ago. How long ago was it? It was in 2020, right, when the pandemic hit?
Yeah, March 15th, 2020.
That's where we met. Well, I mean, we had a meeting and he had to keep being called out of the meeting to deal with stuff on the telephone and what they were going to do and whatever. So we didn't pick this back up again until we had the recent evaluation. So it was easy to, yeah, you can find anywhere you see a seat, you can sit. You want to sit beside me here, move this bag out the way?
Well, someone else is coming
Okay.
in too, so.
Just put them on the end, thank you. So it was easy this time when I got upset when I got mine. I said, oh Jesus, I know everybody's in the same boat with me, living in South Park, this close to downtown. I said, oh my, I knew I was gonna get stung, but not like that. So I sent Dave Ellis, the county manager, an email and reminded him how we brought this to his attention before, but we couldn't go forward with because of the pandemic. He said, of course I remember. And he put me in touch because I couldn't remember Marcus's name. And he responded, he responded immediately. And that's what I like about dealing with the county. It didn't have to wait a month and send 2 or 3 emails to remind you I sent you an email. And I just like to thank the county for being so responsive to initial requests to have a conversation about having a community meeting where you could provide information and people could ask questions freely about what this all means to us. So that's why we're here today. So after this man signs in, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, you can go ahead. This is Marcus Kinrade. He is the Wake County tax assessor. This is the man who lets them happen with our tax declaration. So,
It's all my fault, right?
all your fault. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you now, and you can just sign in there, because I like to respect people's time.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And you sign there right here.
You gonna deem me to stay up here? I kind of like to walk around.
Walk around.
So I'm Marcus Kinrade. I am the Wake County Tax Administrator, which means I administer the valuation process for property taxes. We compute and mail the bills, and then we have to collect the property taxes also. I've worked in the county tax office since 2002, so I guess that's 22 years now, and I've been the administrator in charge for going on 16 years. So this 2024 revaluation is the 4th one that I've worked on since I've been with the county tax office. Want to keep this very informal, as Lynette said. We're not your enemy. We're very friendly and accessible people. We want to interact with you, hear your concerns, hear about your property, potentially make adjustments if they're needed. I brought staff with me. I brought real estate appraisers who have their computers with them. So if you have concerns about your property, we can look them up today while we're here. If we learn new things about your property, we can help you fill out an appeal form and submit an appeal. We also have staff here who can assist you with property tax relief options. If you want to fill out an application for property tax relief, if you're not already qualified, you can fill that out here today also. So we're here to help. Again, we're not your enemy. Lynette mentioned the pandemic. We were just getting started talking about the 2020 revaluation, and we were doing a series of community meetings. We had made one community meeting of 5 that were scheduled, and all of a sudden the whole world shut down March 15th of 2020, and we were all working remote trying to figure out a whole new way of doing our business, and I was pretty well in tune with how property taxes affected older residents at that point. But then in August of 2020, my mother passed away. And I grew up in Iowa, basically up in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, and I moved to North Carolina in the early 90s when I was in the Marine Corps. And when I got out of the Marines, I just stayed because I liked North Carolina. And in dealing with my mother's estate, I saw the value that the assessor had on her house, and it kind of blew my mind because it was literally more than twice what she could ever hope to sell it for. And I went and talked to the assessor's office about that, and they literally had no appeals process whatsoever, no options, just pay, just pay up. And it was like, that's a bad process. So we're here to try to share the process, share our methodologies, try to answer any questions or concerns that you may have, and go from there. And please stop me if you have any questions. I'm not really going to go through a really long spiel. I just want to sort of tell you where we're at in the process. So prior to 2016, the county would reassess all the real estate once every 8 years. Okay, that's the longest that you can go in North Carolina without doing a revaluation, is 8 years. After the 2016 project, most of the largest jurisdictions in the state, with the exception of one, decided to shorten that cycle because things just got so out of whack over 8 years. 8 years is a very long time, and values can change quickly, even in 1 year. So when we were seeing 40 and 50% increases on an 8-year cycle, and we would send out the value notices, and then we would just get besieged by appeals because it was sticker shock, valuation sticker shock. People were stunned by the increase in value. We took the approach, okay, we have software, and we have the staffing, and we have the expertise. We need to shorten this cycle to 4 years to try to take some of the big valuation bumps out of the process. So in 2016, the county commissioners shortened the cycle. We did a revaluation for 2020. The increase in value on that particular cycle, I think, was 23% on that 4-year cycle from 2016 to 2020. And then COVID hit. So we couldn't really gauge truly how that affected the appeals because COVID prevented a lot of people from appealing. In 2020 and in 2021, the market in Wake County and just about every large jurisdiction in North Carolina just absolutely went bonkers. It just boomed. I mean, 25, 30% increases in 1 year. So as we were looking ahead to 2024, we were in the tax office, we were a little concerned that if the market kept going like it was going in 2020 and 2021, we were really going to see a big increase for 2024. Something like 80 or 90%, which just scared us to death because we feared we would be buried in appeals, never to see the light of day again. So to a certain extent, with the increase in interest rates that occurred in 2022, sort of slowed things down in terms of activity in the market. Still, though, for 2024, we saw an increase on average countywide of 51%. 51%. So I was thinking everyone was going to call me a liar. We shortened the cycle to take some of the valuation shock out of the system, and all of a sudden we've got the biggest valuation increase we've ever seen. And most of that was driven by the market in just 2 years, 2020 and 2021. So to try to be more transparent, we worked on our website, tried to put more tools out there for people to look at, revenue neutral tax calculators, comparable sales tools. Still, we expected a very hefty appeal volume. For 2020, we saw an appeal rate of 4.5% countywide. So 4.5 out of every 100 properties appeal for various reasons. I expected the appeal rate to be higher. for this cycle because the valuation increase was twice as much as the last cycle. Oddly, it was less for the informal process. For the informal process, which closed on March 1st, the appeal rate was 3.5%. So the appeal rate went down 1%. To a certain extent, I attribute that to more people sort of knowing what the value of their property is. There's more information available these days. I think people get mailings and you get letters constantly. I know that people who own properties in Southeast Raleigh get inundated by developers and flippers wanting to buy your home. And so to a certain extent, I think more people are in tune with what their property is worth. That may explain it. What else do I want to say about that? So the informal appeal process closed on March 1st. Now don't get nervous, because if you still want to appeal, you can appeal formally to the Wake County Board of Equalization and Review. The deadline to submit that appeal is May 15th. Okay, so you got about 2 more months that you can submit an appeal if you want to. Again, we have staff here that can look up your property, give you an idea of where things stand, help you if you want to submit an appeal. Still a very simple process. You can appear before the Board of Equalization and Review and state your case or tell them about your property. Or if you don't want to appear, you can just submit information and they'll consider it on your behalf. But it is a hearing. They meet at the Wake County Commons building, which is out at the intersection of Pool Road and 440. It's where the historic Oakview County Park is. That's where they meet. They'll start meeting in late April, and they'll meet weekly until they resolve all of the formal appeals they receive. Does anyone have any questions at this point that they'd like to?
I have one. What is the difference between the informal process and the
Yeah. So when we sent out the notices in the middle of January, we offered an informal review period, which ran from the date that we sent out the notices until March 1st. And informal is just like it sounds. You submit the piece of paper, tell us about your property, tell us why you disagree with the value, or you could do it online. An appraiser in our office would review that appeal, say, yep, they're right, we made a mistake here, adjust the value, or say, nope, we're comfortable with where we have it.
Okay,
And we'll close out the appeals and we'll send a notice back to the property owner. I think we're targeting, when are we targeting all those notices to go back?
around April 1st.
April 1st. So we're gonna send out one batch mailing of result letters on April 1st for the informal process. Again, we had 14,788 informal appeals received, 3.5% of all the properties in the county. That will give anyone who receives that notice, if they did file an informal appeal, an opportunity to digest what we did or didn't do and decide whether they want to escalate the appeal formally. And you did not have to appeal informally if you want to submit a formal appeal. Again, May 15th is the deadline if you want to submit a formal appeal, a Board of Equalization and Review appeal. Yes, sir.
Yeah, when you evaluate property, you evaluate commercial property higher than residential property.
Brad, you want to talk about that?
Can, not necessarily, 2 different approaches. For the residential property, we're typically looking at comparative sales. For commercial properties, we're going to base it primarily, we're going to put the most weight on an income approach. Or market rents compared to other similar properties, market vacancy and collection loss, what are the market expenses, and what are the market-derived capitalization rates. So the net operating income will capitalize the net operating income on the income approach, and that'll hopefully produce a good value. But we can't say really definitively whether or not commercial is gonna be higher or lower than residential. It just depends on the property type, property location. Many factors go into that.
Thank you.
I was curious, how are you justifying, say for instance, $1 million house just built next to yours? You had a property value on one property overinflated, and then you take it and put it on the value of the house just built. For the older houses, there's nothing's been done to, a number of regular maintenance. Why would you have the value of that the same as the new house? Now, it seemed like to me, if it's a brand new house, I understand the tax is high. I understand everything's high. But if it's an older house, it's been there 50, 60, 70 years, why would you put the tax value close to the same as the house that you just built? That's not right.
And I go out and try to figure out where that's occurring, because we, well, yeah.
All over.
I mean, we spent a lot of time in this general area, because obviously there's a lot of redevelopment that's going on in this area. A lot of properties are being torn down, and big homes are replacing them. And when a property is sold and then the home is torn down, that generally tells us that the sale was for the lot.
Right.
Okay, so we start with the lot values. We try to set the lot values based on what the market is paying for the lots. So generally speaking, in that scenario you're talking about, the lot values may be very similar. Now the home values, generally speaking, and hopefully, should be vastly different.
Okay, what I've noticed, because I've looked a lot over what I've noticed, especially in the older homes, you devalue the house, you overinflate the land, okay? The building of the new house is the opposite. Okay, so say for instance, if the lot was sold for $165,000, which I know for a fact a lot was sold over in Person Street for that. But then you evaluated and lot is worth $300,000. So how can that be?
I can't answer hypotheticals like that. I need to be looking at it. I mean, I know just looking at where Lynette lives, I know 2 pretty large homes were squeezed in beside your house in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, so that definitely affected your land value for sure. And I think your home was built in the 30s, the 1920s. So yeah, I looked at your home too, and we probably have some work to do on your home value. What we tried to do to recognize what's going on in the market in this general area is try to identify homes that have been owned by the same owner for over 25 years, where there were no building permits other than, say, mechanical, that have been issued in 25 years. We made the assumption, generally speaking, that those homes probably do not have brand new kitchens and renovated bathrooms and granite countertops, and we tried as best we could to significantly write down the value of the improvement on those homes. Now, we certainly did not get them all, because all we can do is rely on our data. So in conveying that, we can look at your properties today and see if we mark down the improvement value, the structure value, to account for you just living in it, right? You're not trying to sell it or things like that. So we did take pretty extraordinary steps for 2024 to mitigate some of what you're talking about that we have not been able to do in the past. But this is a very active redeveloping area, as you all are well aware. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. You talked about the analysis to evaluate the values of residential properties and some of the things you use as comparable sales. Can you talk about some of the other metrics that the tax assessor's office uses to reestablish the new value or the increased in value of some of these properties?
Matt, you want to talk about some of that in this residential neighborhood?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matthew Harris, I'm one of the appraisal managers.
with the tax administration office and, all right. Yes. Yeah, I'm Matthew Harris, one of the appraisal managers in the department, and I oversaw the residential side of the revaluation for the county. So the metrics that we use, like Marcus mentioned, number one is sales comparison. We're going to look at how properties are selling within the county and from neighborhood to neighborhood. We also delineate a neighborhood as properties with similar characteristics, typically similar, built around the similar time period, similar age of the home, similar characteristics of the homes, similar things happening within the market area. And then we'll also look at the age, like I said, the age, the condition of the home, whether homes are being renovated, whether they're being typical maintenance is occurring on the homes, roofs, windows replaced, and then best we can, identifying work that's going on inside the home through, best we can use or update that information is typically through permits that are taken out on the homes. So we're looking at all those different factors. We're going to try to compare, like you mentioned, sir, apples to apples when we're revaluing an area or revaluing a neighborhood. We're not going to compare that brand new construction $1 million home, talking about the structure itself, to a home that was built in the 20s or 30s. We're going to look at homes that were built in the 20s and 30s, even if they're in the same neighborhood, on the same street. We're going to compare the brand new construction homes to the brand new construction homes on that street or on the several streets around there, and then the older homes compared to the older homes. And again, it's not a perfect process, but those are the things we're looking at. We try to review county-wide every home that was built year 2000 and older, actually looking at each of those in the field, drive-by of each of those homes. And we did about 98% of that for the reval. Yes. Yes.
So in determining the difference between an older home and a newer home, which are in the same neighborhood,
Mhm.
how can you expand a little bit more on how the values of the older homes are still increasing substantially because the newer homes are being built, but they're being evaluated separately? Because that kind of doesn't, I can't understand how the values of the older homes are increasing so much because of the new builds if they're being evaluated differently because they are older homes. Can you expand a little bit on that, please?
So I'll try my best. Everyone in the county is valued based off of one schedule of value. So I don't know if you're aware that's 200-300 or a couple 100-page book on the county website, schedule of values. Every residential property, every commercial property is valued based off of the data within that schedule of values. So when we are compiling or analyzing, what are our base rates going to be for every home across the county? That's price per square foot of a deck, price per square foot of living area, price per square foot of a screen porch. It's all coming from that one schedule of values. And so if the county in general, residential is going up 56%, that means the building values and the rates across the board are going to go up 56%. And then from there, we're going to take into account the age of the home, the condition of the home, is there any deferred maintenance on the home, the grade of the home, which is based off the quality of construction and the materials used to build the home. From there, from that base rate, it's going to either increase or decrease. The rates are going to be higher on a newer home with better quality of construction, not better quality of construction, newer materials, less depreciation. Those rates are going to be higher, whereas an older home, we're not going to be changing or those rates aren't going to be changing as much.
And then my last follow-up, thank you for explaining thoroughly. Are those records available to the public or to the homeowners whose houses are being valued?
The schedule of
Not the schedule, you said that was on the website, but kind of like all those parameters, those metrics that are being used to evaluate their homes. Is that available to the public, that information?
So the processes we use are all on the revaluation homepage, or kind of how we go through the process of neighborhooding and land pricing and actually field and office review. The processes we use are on our revaluation webpage. when it comes to what I specifically mentioned, the different rates and grading and condition factors, all of that is located within that schedule of values booklet. It's very thorough, detailed.
Yeah, and your property characteristics are available on the website.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever used our real estate search to look at your property on the county website?
I've used the Wake County, very different than the Durham County for sure. Yeah, thank you.
For me, yes. Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. We're talking about property. I want to talk a little bit about just the land itself. So I have a vacant lot.
yes, ma'am.
And this is based on the size of the vacant lot, but when something goes up 1,000%, how do you justify 1,000%?
Right.
We talk about 50%, but when you look at 1,000, we have a piece of property that was maybe once $45,000, now it's 1.6. What do you do when something is like that, and then the property next door is maybe $300,000? How do you? I mean, there's no building, there's nothing we can compare it to, other than it being in downtown Raleigh.
If next door is that much less, that's something I would personally like to look at. But again, you know, we're going to look at the comparable sales within the area. Everything is, from our standpoint that we're looking at, is how are things around there that are similar, how are they selling? So was it a property with a house that was torn down in the area that
commercial
sold?
property?
Yeah, it
So,
sounds like.
It was once up, it was a house there. I have a daycare center. There was a house there, and the house was torn down, and we used it for a playground. That's one of our lots. But then our lot that's right next door to that one is, and we combined the two lots. That one is like 300,000. So when you put them together, it's $2 million. And there's no buildings there. It's just two playground lots. So that is my concern when I'm looking at a percentage. We're up 1,000%, and I'm just not understanding because there's no structure there.
Right. And I approach those problems the opposite way. You're asking me to justify a 1,000% increase, and I'm going to look at the value we have on it and say, is that right or is that wrong?
And longevity,
Right.
we've been there over 25 years.
Okay. But I'm going to start at the property value and say, okay, this is the value we have on it, 1.3, 1.6. Is that the correct value or is it the wrong value? Is that what the market will pay for that? That's our mandate. That's what we have to do. And then try to explain, okay, why did it increase so much? Is it because we had it extremely undervalued before? Or is there something fundamentally wrong here? Do we not understand what's going on? And that's where we would look to you.
Because we can't afford something like that. Yeah, you can sell it and make it, but we're trying to stay in
Yeah.
continuity.
See, you
What
just
do we do?
right. You just said it. You can sell it for that. So I understand, but that's our job. We have to value hypothetical sale. So yeah. We got, yes, you?
How do you look at, because where my family lived at, I mean, it's new construction all around, left, right. I mean, they building this new condo, whatever, Acorn, and you know, that has probably will increase the value. Okay, on this corner right here on Bloodworth Street, okay, they build the new homes. I don't know what they're going for. I wouldn't doubt if they go for about 80,000 or maybe more than that, 800,000. You know, so with with that tax rate going, you know, those buildings being built, how are y'all gonna assess this with with the other properties? Because like you say, my people been there, I mean, what, 40, 50, 60, I'll put you like this, over 65 years. But it just appears that, you're increasing the tax value. Now, I understand y'all gonna assess that, but is it really gonna be fair?
Yeah. So
That's my question. Is it really gonna be fair?
there's two dynamics. The way we do our work, our software and our methods and our methodologies, they work really well in Morrisville. Okay? You look at Morrisville, 90% of the town has been built in the last 30 years. It's townhome after townhome after townhome. Things are very similar. Sales are pretty consistent. Our valuation models and techniques work wonderful there. We hardly even have to visit the neighborhoods. It's just, but then when you come to a neighborhood that's been there for 100 years, 80 years, and you've got redevelopment occurring, structures are being torn down, replaced with structures that really just don't fit, don't fit what was there previously. And then you combine it with development ordinance changes, zoning changes that allow for more dense construction. That makes it very difficult on our techniques and our methods, and we have to spend a lot more time in the neighborhood addressing exactly what you're talking about. What's the right value? What's the appropriate value? But the part that deals with revaluation, what we're talking about right now, is the value. It's not the affordability part. We can talk about tax relief here in a few minutes once all the questions are answered about the valuation perspective. Yes, ma'am.
When you say you get it on website, but a lot of the elder people are the ones that own the homes.
Yeah.
From generation to generation. Do you have anything that you can have on paper, black and white, you can send out? If that person requests that, you send it out on the website. A lot of elder people don't have access to computers.
Right.
Or know that kind of technology.
Right.
So I think it needs to be fair to everybody across the wall. And then too, if you look at the District of Columbia in Washington DC, a lot of people own land there. They end up losing that land because of the prices of the tax. And they had no other chance but, or choice but to sell their property or
Right.
either lose it. So are we gonna do the same thing here in North Carolina, knowing that most of the people who actually was born here, raised here, are being eliminated by other people from other places who have more money? And that's not fair for the residents who have been here over 100 years, generations.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about generational rights.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we should be godfathers.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not very familiar with the appeals process. Is the appeals process to appeal the value that has been assigned to the homes and the properties, or is it to appeal the tax that the person's trying to pay on their property? Would you mind?
value. The value.
The value of the homes.
Yes, ma'am. There's two parts to the tax bill. You have the value, which is assigned by our office. We're measuring the market, so it's the market that creates the value. We're just trying to measure it. And then you have the tax rates, which are adopted by the county commissioners or the city council, where you all reside. So, and that will be developed through the budget process, which is ongoing now, currently. The county manager is going to present his proposed budget to the commissioners on May 6th. It's a Monday. I think it's the first Monday in May. So that will be your opportunity to hear what he believes should be funded in the county's budget for the upcoming year. An important thing to monitor is the public school system. Okay, I think that the public schools are having their meeting today where the superintendent is going to present the amount of money that they want from the county for their operations for the upcoming year. So that's a huge part of the county budget, is what's spent with the Wake County Public School System. So, tune into that, educate yourself on what's going on with those requests, and then pay attention, if you live in the city of Raleigh, to the city of Raleigh's budget process, and participate in their public hearings. And if you're having trouble with rising taxes or affordability, that's your opportunity to tell them, because they determine where your tax dollars are spent and what tax rate is adopted. So tax relief. Let's shift to your concern about tax relief. So North Carolina counties, there's 100 of them, and none of them have the ability or the authority to make their own rules in terms of property tax relief. It's all mandated and controlled by the North Carolina general statutes. So the General Assembly creates the rules, okay? There's 3 types of property tax relief. One is called the homestead exclusion. The second one is called a circuit breaker deferment. And then there's a veterans exclusion for 100% service-connected disabled veterans or their surviving spouses. Okay, so let's start with the homestead exclusion. It is based on age and income. Okay,
Jim, what?
age and income. So to qualify, you have to be 65 or older on the January 1 that you apply for the benefit, and your total income from all sources for this year needs to be less than, I think it's 36,700.
That's crazy.
36,700.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So here's the problem with that, right? Y'all know it. 36,700. It's kind of hard to live in Wake County and own a home.
Yeah, that's right.
And on 36,700, it's the same income threshold in Wake County as Gates, as Bertie, as Robinson, as Lee County, all 100 counties in the state. Same income threshold. Okay, that's required by the general statutes. And that's the interpretation of the state constitution that requires uniformity in the application of tax exemptions. Okay? It's a problem. I'm telling you right now, it's a problem. It's not fair. It's not right. We made attempts at the General Assembly last year to change that to a HUD index that's indexed by the cost of living in each county, which would have been far more fair, but it did not even get started before it was shot down. Okay? But we're going to try again. We haven't given up because, we deal with property owners every day who have to say the same thing. This is way too low. It's not right. And I agree. So we're working on trying to change that, and I would encourage you to talk to your representatives in the General Assembly and tell them directly that it's too low. Something needs to be done with that. So let me finish and I'll come back to you. So I think there's about 4,000 properties in Wake County that qualify for the homestead exclusion. Okay? Out of 300,000 residential properties. So it's about 1.5%. So obviously it's way too low, right? So the second type of tax exemption for residents in the county or the state is called the circuit breaker deferment. If you think about a circuit breaker in electricity, what does it do? It stops the electricity, right? So a circuit breaker in tax stops the tax at a percent of your income. So if your income and your age would qualify you for the homestead exclusion, which would exempt half the value of the property from taxation. If you were in a really, really high value property, say a $1.5 million home, and you could qualify for a 50% reduction in the value. But even then, it would be a really high tax bill. You could instead opt to do the circuit breaker deferment, which would stop the tax at 4% of your income. Okay?
4%.
4% of your income. So say hypothetically your income was $30,000, you would be required to pay $1,200 in tax, which is 4% of that income. The rest would be deferred. So let's say there was $4,000 in tax that was deferred. You don't have to pay it, but at some point in time when a disqualifying event occurs, your heirs will have to pay it. And it's not as bad as it sounds. It's the current year and 3 prior. So if you're in the deferment for 15 years, all of the deferred tax prior to 4 years in the past just drops off and goes away. But I know a lot of people don't like to leave their heirs debt. So it's not a very popular program. Only about 115 properties in the county currently elect to utilize that program. Now, the good thing is that the value, the income threshold does go up. It can go up to as high as $55,050, I think. And that would stop the tax above 5% of the income. So on a very high value property, that's a pretty good way to control the taxes. But otherwise, most people are better off to opt for the homestead exclusion, which excludes half the value. Okay. And then the last one is the disabled veterans exclusion. If a veteran has a 100% disability rating that's service connected through the VA, they or their surviving spouse who does not remarry can qualify for a reduction of $45,000 in value. Okay. Those are the 3 options, and that's it. That's all. That's all we can offer, and that's all we can really talk about, because that's all the state legislature offers at this point. Are there any questions about that?
Homestead exclusion.
Yes, sir.
No spouse and have to be over 65.
Only one spouse would have to qualify by age, but we would have to look at both incomes if it's a husband and wife.
You said the homestead said it's 4,000 that are qualified. Is that how many people have applied for it?
That's how many have applied and qualified.
And been qualified.
Correct.
And do you have that kind of breaking down in a place about how well that's represented in Southeast Ohio?
We have it by township. There's 20 townships, so we could break it down that way if someone wanted that information. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. You didn't want to be.
Can you go back to the evaluation?
Sure.
The gentleman asked me just last night. He lives in a habitat with Manitown that he purchased. And he said the lot was about 30,000 and the house about 70,000. But his valuation he got this year is at 300-something thousand in the house. So he can't quite understand that, why that's happening. And some more gonna be asking the same question. So I'm gonna have to answer that question for him, I guess.
I mean, the question I would say is that what the market would pay for it? That's where we would start. Is that the fair value of the property? Is that what it would exchange hands for?
What you're talking about before about was comparisons. It's only being compared to other homes of this similar type in that area. So it's not like it's anything that's great right except for a park. It's probably about 3 or 4 blocks up the street. Whereas I live across the street from him, and mine is kind of high too. But when you look at his and mine, it's two different brackets. The reason I say that, I live in a house on the corner with a larger lot. I'm fortunate enough to have a larger house because that's an old neighborhood. I've been there 26 years. The Habitat homes only been there about 3 years, so they built those in. You know how the city put them in. So, but they're taxed still around the same rate that we are being taxed. And I have another property over on Cooper Road. The only thing I see great over there, they built some $300,000 home, $300,000 to $400,000 home across the street right there at Sandybrook. And my lot, I've been there, I stayed there from 1975. Only thing that's great there is they got a service station in my backyard on the back, so it's nothing else. I don't see anything else that increases the value. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We get a lot of traffic going to the park out there, to the, you know, the amphitheater. We get that. That's about it. But the value of the homes, it's just like it is in North Hill somewhere, or West Raleigh.
Well, you know, if it doesn't make sense, call us or file an appeal and we'll look at it. But, you know, we based our opinion on the market and what it's doing in that general area. Now, when it comes to a habitat home, the thing to think about is there's nothing about a habitat home unless there's a restriction in the deed when it's conveyed to that property owner that restricts how much they can resell it for, that protects it from a fair market valuation. He can sell it, right? You can just sell it. So, I mean, even though he was moved into it as a habitat home, there's nothing that would restrict it from selling in the market.
I understand what you're saying, you know, they just got it from Kuwait.
Yeah.
They got a lot of folks coming. Last question I have to follow up on that is, with two. For one, you get about 20,000 letters every other week of phone calls from value problem, California, Kalamazoo, you know. And they're putting value, I don't know where they get their value of the rating of the house, or they look it on the website or whatever, but most time they're undervalued. What they're asking you to sell the house for. Taxes on the houses. You saying something, city council in the budget, the rating, how did you get the rates? The budget goes so high, your rating go back. How do you get that again?
You have to give you a better foundation for the question. I'm not understanding.
I know you said about the Senate. People down on General Street, I understand.
We're talking about tax, getting the income threshold up?
Yeah.
No, I think, are you?
But I'm talking about
tax rates.
Are they setting the tax
setting
rate?
tax rate for that. Yes. The rating, city council.
You want me to explain how they come up with their tax rate?
Well, I heard you say something based on
Right.
people not doing anything, or maybe doing something to the house, maybe not countertops and floors. People don't know, unless you got a permit, you don't know what that person has done to their home to improve it or make it look good. Or you talk about countertops and flooring and all that stuff, decks. Now, I've done all that, but you don't know that because I haven't been down there to get a permit for it, except for the roof.
Are you telling me about that?
I'm telling you that. You don't need to get it out. When you're doing stuff to your house, improve the thing. Except for my deck, that's the only thing you need a permit for, and the roof. What I do on the inside, I don't need a permit for. That's what I'm saying.
You do.
Yeah.
And what was that address?
So again, in terms of the actual tax that you have to pay, number one, look at your value. Is the value what you would sell it for if you decided you were going to sell it? Is it
Yeah, but I don't want to put taxes on it.
right? Right. Is it a reasonable value? Is it ballpark correct? Yes or no? I'm sorry.
You can get the value of that house if you sell it for the value.
I can't hear you, sir.
I said you can get the value of that house if you sell it for the value. They always come thunder. They ain't gonna get, if that house was $2 million, they ain't gonna give you no $2 million if you sell it. They'll come under.
Well, back to my statement. Look at the value that we assessed your property at. Is that representative of a hypothetical sale if you were going to sell it? Yes?
Most of the time, no.
Okay, well then,
Yeah, y'all have a design for people.
Are we
that
too-
wanna sell,
are
but
we-
What about the people that want to stay?
okay, well, here's the issue. We don't have
Who wants to stay?
an assessment system in North Carolina where the property has no value until you want to sell it. That's just not the way it works. We have to determine a hypothetical sale price, whether a property is sold for 40 years, hasn't sold for 40 years, or whether it sold last week. We have to put a hypothetical fair market value on properties. Then we have to look at, are there any tax relief options available for the property owner? Yes or no? It's a very logical process we have to follow. Yes, ma'am.
The homestead exclusion program, once a person qualifies into it, do they have to get it renewed every so often, or after they qualify this until they pass away? How does that work?
So once you qualify for the homestead exclusion, you're good. It's a one-time application. If you are in the circuit breaker deferment, then the property owner has to apply every year because it's the amount of tax they paid is tied to a percent of their income. And the income changes every year. So that's an annual application. Yes, sir.
Yes, so I appreciate you saying about that the system is not as accurate in these types of neighborhoods, and I think that's probably true, everywhere, that the, rapidly gentrifying areas are the least, where property taxes are the least just, oftentimes. And I'm Rob Stevens, work with, I got this note from Men of Southeast Raleigh. I would love to talk to organizers afterwards to get some resources to do these appeals. I think at a previous meeting with Hudson Bond, it was mentioned that y'all can't use MLS data.
We'd love to. MLS won't let us get access to their data.
So that's something that, we can get access to. And you have to consider it if we provided our appeals. Is that correct?
And you are who? I didn't hear what you
I'm
said.
Rob Stevens,
And you are with whom?
Men of Southeast Raleigh.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Anthony Pope sent us all a note.
Okay.
And we're working with a few other groups as well. So that's some resources that they don't have, but that goes to your point, that there's information that actually you can see on Zillow too oftentimes.
Right.
That shows that this house that's been totally renovated, stunning marble, you can even look at the listings and see that's being valued the same as a house across the street that hasn't had a major repair in 8 years. And we have, there's example after example of that. What's a pain is trying to get to do these individually. And that's what is, because we did probably 50 of them. We don't know how many people turned them in. And that's just a drop in the bucket as compared to something that's a little more systemic. But I really appreciate the organizer here, and we can stay in touch about other strategies that have worked in other places as well. But that information, do y'all look at the Zillow information?
Short answer, if we're reviewing a sale, the best thing, Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, those third-party websites, the best things they give us are the photos, images, interior images from a property that did sell. When it comes to the Zestimate, Redfin estimate prices, we do not look at the valuation part, because that's largely, from my experience, pretty inaccurate when it comes to the valuation aspect of those third-party sites. But again, yes, we do use them for the photos. That's great, because since we do not have MLS access, a lot of times you can even find historical photos on properties that sold several years ago. It helps a lot when it comes to that, yes.
In a perfect world, we would be able to we'd be able to visit every property, walk up, walk around it, look on Zillow, look on MLS, see if there's pictures, and get every value as perfect as we can. But the volume and time prevent us from doing that. We only have 35 appraisers, so we have to do these projects in about 2 years. We do the very best we can, and then we send out the notices and ask you for your feedback. And if we're wrong, we'll fix it. Now, we understand that the appeals process can be arduous on some people or intimidating. We don't want it to be. That's why we come out and do these events to talk to you, to show you that we'll listen and we'll work with you. But ultimately, if we're wrong, we sort of need you to give us feedback to tell us that.
Yeah, like Marcus said, and I mentioned earlier, we drove around in the field on homes that were built before year 2000. If we can't see the inside of homes, that's why it is important, like you said, for events like this, that we put the word out. If there's something inside your house that you think your value is too high, or we maybe increase the value of your home from things that we thought we saw but aren't really on the inside of your home, that's what the appeal process is for, the informal reviews. We want them. I like this process because it helps us get down to the more minute individual properties and try to make corrections where we did potentially increase a value that shouldn't have been increased. Because again, we don't see the insides of your homes. We don't see the work that you have or have not done. So typically, if we're driving around a neighborhood, we are going to compare your home to properties within that specific neighborhood that are like your home, but that have sold. So if you're doing updates to the exterior of your home, and the house that sold down the street did some updates to the exterior of your home, we're going to increase the value similarly. But they may have done more work on the inside, where we ideally would have increased their value a little bit more because they did more work on the inside of their home. They renovated new bathrooms, kitchens, things of that nature. So if you didn't do that work, then that's, hopefully we didn't increase the value. But if we did, that's what this process for, is to make those corrections and to get more information about the true interior of your home and the true condition of your home.
Before we get into more questions, do you have more to present before we, it may help answer some questions.
Hi, I'm Nicole Kaiser. I'm the deputy administrator.
Come up front. Come up front.
Come up front, okay. I just wanted, hey, good afternoon. I wanted to highlight a couple of things that can help maybe clarify any questions you have about appeals or where the information is. I had heard earlier, well, what about the folks who can't go online? So in every notice that was mailed out, there was a form if you wanted to appeal, and you can mail that back into our office. You can email it. If you have someone who wants to email it, you can drop it off at our office downtown. Also, I wanted to clarify, if there's questions on here that are confusing, we put this pamphlet in that notice with a phone number. We keep saying we're friendly. We really are friendly. If you have questions about what does this word mean, we'll have appraisers on the phone answering it within 30 seconds to help you explain, well, what does this word mean? What do I need to fill out? We really want to help capture, if you have information to share with us, we really want that information to be able to make changes if changes need to be made. Marcus talked about it being a big process. There's over 425,000 properties in Wake County, and there's 35 appraisers. And we only look at the outside. We're not like the appraiser when you get a mortgage that comes in and measures your inside. And so it's really, we need your information to help us if there's something we need to understand. So I have some blank appeal forms if you guys want to be able to get this to be able to submit an appeal. I also have some more brochures if you have just some general questions. This is online, but it's also in paper here.
Just fire away.
Thanks for that information, and I do appreciate what you've shared about the organizations that are helping citizens get these applications filled out or have questions. My mother is 101, lives on 100 Bart Street, has been in that house 76 years, and my sister that lives with her, we went to another meeting. I've seen all of you guys, maybe my second or third time, because I needed to hear it again. So I can keep telling other people, but my mom, because of going to some of these meetings, we were able to get someone like you to come over to her house, pulled up on the laptop, showed us what the comparables were with her house, and helped us fill out the appeal and submitted it. Now we're waiting to hear back about it, but her house sits between 500, 600, and then there's $1 million house that's less than a block from her house. So her taxes are extremely high. So it can be done, and I was concerned at that. I went out and looked at it online, and I thought, okay, how intimidating is this? And I call myself pretty computer, savvy. So if you don't think that's something that you're comfortable with doing, there are organizations out there like yourself and other people that are here that will come to your house, pull up the computer, and show you the comps in your neighborhood why your house is the taxes. We've even also found out they had my mom having not a fireplace. The house has never had a fireplace. So there are things that if you don't look or ask, there may be some discrepancies. Doesn't hurt.
Can I ask my question? Sure. Okay. It seems to me, and there are many people in here like me who would be interested in more information on the Homestead Act if it were available. But if it's based on the income of $36,000, that is not going to help us at all, because as poor as we are, having been public servants, retired, never made money while we were working, and we damn sure don't have it now that we're retired. Doctor co-pays and medicine or whatever. That the only thing that we have available to us is to try to get through the General Assembly to change the income level for people to qualify for that. So there's nothing currently that allows for any consideration for age, longevity, the length of time you've lived in your property and you've maintained it, your age of being over 65 for a period of years, that could be used in guiding what kind of income level we're talking. So if you only go up 40,000, that still ain't gonna help. How, I guess, question, as individuals, we can't make that change with the General Assembly. Are there any organizations that are currently working on this that would help to protect people who are long-term residents in Wake County who make more than this minimum wage here, that could coalesce together to try to get some influence on the General Assembly too? Because that's got to happen. Otherwise, we don't qualify. I'm not a veteran. We'll be dead and gone, yeah, and this has gone on for far too long. That Homestead Act needs to be revised, and we understand that the county can't do, but you say you're going back to them. Are y'all working with communities, organizations like ours, to get whatever the appeal is going to include? What salary level are you going to be recommending? Because if it's still too low, like one week they still talk about low income. Well, hell, we're low income too, but not as low as what you have as part, so it's not helping us. Our families have owned these properties for over 100 years, and we're being forced out with this. If that's the only way we can get a fair valuation of our property, allow us to stay, like you said. We don't want to sell. I don't care what you want to pay me for that house. Where the hell am I going? Because if I sell this house, I got to have $1 million to go somewhere else if I'm going to stay in Wake County. So that's not helpful to me, that it's based on what somebody else will pay who has not invested anything in that property that my family has owned for 100 years. That, to me, that's no justification for that. How do we get that criteria that goes to the General Assembly to look at allowing the people who are long-term residents, who are over 65, to be able to have a childless chance of staying in their homes? That's what we're mostly interested in, and being able to pay a reasonable tax rate.
I see a smart young attorney in the back row that I've seen before, I think in Biltmore Hills. Why don't you stand up?
Come up to the front, please. Come up to the front, please.
I'll teach you to raise your hand.
Because we want to stay. We don't. How many here want to sell their home? Do you want to stay in your house? You want to stay in your house? Raise your hand if you want to stay in your house. See, we're not interested in who wants to buy it. We get those calls every day, all day.
Yes, ma'am. I gotta go back to work, y'all. I just stepped in for the meeting. My name is Greg Moss. I'm the president of the North Carolina chapter of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. But we've been working to help revitalize the Biltmore Hills Neighborhood Association. See some people from Biltmore Hills in here. And we've actually had a property tax workshop on this homestead property waiver program. And we had over 20 seniors attend that workshop. Maybe only one of them qualified. So we are at that next step where, you know, this has to change. So we met with the administrator before, and he has done some good work to push for what you're asking for. So now we are at that next step. We're ready to strategize and work together to put pressure on the General Assembly so we can get this thing changed. And I know the county's willing to work with us, and maybe some other counties, high populated counties like Durham County, Asheville, Mecklenburg, may be willing to assist us as well to put, you know, some proposed law together to get this changed. But I'm going to volunteer Rob if you're interested in working with us, give your information to him, and I will reach out to you, and we can work together, because we're stronger together. That's the only way.
That's what we're going to have to make it happen. Absolutely. Okay. Greg Morris.
Moss, M-O-S-S.
I've got his
You got it, Scott.
Can the Wake County Tax and this group do some kind of general formatted letter saying that what the homestead group amount's not high enough and some percentage over and above that amount that we could all just sign? Because we don't know really what the wordage needs to be. I mean, we can help you figure out what an amount's gonna be, but the wording on it, and then we could get all of us to sign at these different committee meetings or different group meetings in the community.
Yeah.
Individually sign, and then you could take that with you whenever you
go to the General Assembly.
I want you to come to the General Assembly. I can tell, you can do it, say what the problem is way better than I can, and it's gonna be more powerful coming from y'all, but we should do that. We should use every strategy that we got to do what we can to get this change.
Yeah, but you gotta have something in writing first, like she said, so can that be done? And then, of course, people showing up at the time to make the appeal, that's the second step, but getting it on paper so that we agree that
So
this is what we're asking
draw
for.
something up so that we can sign, and then if you've got
We are in agreement with
2,500
this.
individual sheets of paper, that has an impact on its own.
Always.
Let's do that. I'll leave a sheet, and I'll pass it around, give it to Rod, and I will follow up with you and the folks in the Biltmore Hills Neighborhood Association. We can all work together on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you his email.
Yes, okay, I'm gonna let y'all sign it, because I can always sign it later.
The sheet you signed.
This sheet you signed in
Signed
here.
it,
I can
hold it
get
down.
everybody sign in on my sign-in sheets, because I can give him that copy to that.
That's right. Yeah.
Make sure you signed in.
So before we shift off this topic, let me frame up the problem. You've done a good job of framing up your individual problems. So where is the income threshold too low? It's in Wake, it's in Mecklenburg, it's in Durham,
With Forsyth.
it's in not necessarily
Not necessarily Forsyth.
Buncombe
Interesting.
County. So it's the large urban jurisdictions, generally speaking, where the cost of living and the home values are highest. That's where the income threshold is too low. So remember, the income threshold applies to all 100 counties uniformly currently. So what happens if you increase the income threshold to satisfy the counties where it's too low? Then it's too high in the other 90 counties in the state, and their residential tax base could be significantly affected. So the problem you run into is that you have an urban versus rural county fight at the General Assembly. The urban counties are saying, hey, the income's too low, we got to raise it. And then you got the poor urban counties saying, oh, if you raise it, you're going to devastate our tax base. So we got to overcome that issue. And that was why we proposed using a HUD index that was targeted and tied to the cost of living in these various counties. And that was a constitutional interpretation that we need to figure out a way to get past.
I still have a question. I live in the 200 block of East Cabarrus Street. And my area is residential / commercial. So I'm wondering how you define the valuation when the neighborhood's split like that.
Split zoning, we're gonna, the highest and best use of the property, but at the same time, looking at, I'd have to look at the area specifically. If majority of the homes in that specific neighborhood or street, if everything's being used as a residential property, then that's the best use for that street. And that's how it's gonna be valued. It's gonna be valued more as residential, not looking at a service station or something like that and valuing the land comparable to that. Now, if you're on the corner block or corner of a street where you have other commercial properties surrounding you, you have barbershop, you have daycare, you have apartment, then that's a different story. Because again, the highest and best use for that could be taking the house down and building a service station or building something commercial related. So it all depends, in those split zoning areas, what's around you and what's the typical?
Well, the acorn sits in my backyard.
One apartment or condo unit isn't necessarily going to change the whole, every single lot.
Eventually, it's gonna change, because not only on that lot where the Acorn is, they're getting ready to put a 12-story hotel on that same lot. And next to the Masonic building on Blunt Street, there's a little teeny tiny parking lot. They're getting ready to put a 12-story hotel in there. They're gonna park across the street in the parking deck. So, it's, for me, I'm trying to figure out which set of valuations are you using.
We can look at it once,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
I don't know that I have a question so much as a comment. You spoke a lot, and I realize you guys drew the short straws in having to be here and present, and that it's really complicated. I absolutely see that your whole metric of evaluation works really great in an area that's changed a lot significantly in huge portions like Morrisville, and that it's a lot more complex in this area. And I'm not going to speak for anybody here. To me, the issue is not so much who's put granite countertops in or has a fireplace. It is the insane land value that's been assigned. If anything, y'all have devalued the properties. And if you're wanting like a big concise area, I can tell you about Kinrade, which is a very modest, house that's about 100 years old. They're pretty small. Y'all have revalued the houses to be about $15,000, but the land is $2 million an acre. And I don't know how in the world it is insurmountable for people to be able to stay in their homes for that's one of the last dwindling pockets of naturally occurring affordable housing there. And it seems to be done based on the pressure of speculative development. That is what a lot of this seems to be, whether it's what Miss Edna has said about hotels being built and such. It's based on speculative development. Carolee, it's downtown South. And what are the steps that you guys have taken to consider that? It's not about the house value. Y'all have created an environment in which the house itself has no value. And so it's the land value which then just opens those floodgates for speculative developers to come in. And as this woman, I can't remember if she left or not, said, it's creating an environment in which the people who are here and have been here, who are maybe barely hanging on, are being displaced by people who are not even here yet. And what are the metrics for that being kind of taken into consideration? I think this gentleman over here mentioned that this area in particular is feeling the most brunt. There's trying to stave off gentrification as much as possible. That seems to be a losing battle at times, and this just seems to be throwing gasoline onto that fire. So I realize these are kind of questions or issues that are beyond your pay grade and your ability to influence, but it just feels, I understand there's only, I can't remember it down, 45 of y'all, 35 of y'all, tens of thousands of properties to look at that you can't be on the ground, but this is such a nuanced area in particular. There's the whole affordable housing piece, rental housing, and it's just creating so much pressure for folks not only to be able to stay here in their homes and afford that land value. And I know you're saying it's based on market value and what people will pay. I can't think of a single person, I don't want to speak for any of y'all, there's nobody here that's wanting to go anywhere because they can't afford to go anywhere. There is just a huge crisis here, I think, for people that is really scary to consider kind of where this is headed. I also think that when y'all did the valuations, it was also at a time in which the market was white hot, and it has since cooled off some. And so a lot of these appraisals and land values they're basing things on, that has cooled some. So I wonder what the consideration is going to be for a changing market where, certainly things are not going to go back to, pre-2010 levels or anything like that, but maybe not so quite incandescent as they've been for the past year. Properties are sitting on the market for longer. The asking price is dropping on some of these big properties around here. So that's just my 2 cents.
One of the things we haven't talked about at all is that the sum total is supposed to be revenue neutral. And listening to you, I wonder if there is any room within the revenue neutral to adjust by areas and neighborhoods. Because when you look at whose property's gone up, those of us who live downtown have seen the huge increase. So we will pay more with revenue neutral. And there are areas that will pay less who are out. You know. But could the county or city look at that and say, within our revenue neutral, we're going to rebalance a little bit. And we're going to look at these downtown areas who've had this, like you say, this extraordinary increase, maybe based on speculation, that we could overall bring that down some and let that revenue be made up where they're going to get money back as over gets last year. And so there's this big imbalance when you get it done. Some people are going to pay less. We're going to pay a lot more.
So the short answer to your question is no. We can't do that.
Could the city or the county? You can't do it.
No. The uniformity clause in the Constitution says you have to use the same tax rate across all properties, whether it be a house, a car, a boat. You can't change the tax rate based on property type. You can't change the tax rate based on geography. You can't do that. That would violate the uniformity clause of the Constitution. Same thing with the income threshold for tax relief. Can't change that. Uniformity.
And just one quick comment. I think we should give more consideration to circuit breaker deferment, because yes, there are reasons not to do it, but if somebody thinks, well, I'm likely to live the next 5, 10 years, you would gain a lot by that. And just,
Right.
Tell your relatives, I'm going to do this. If I happen to die in the next 2 or 3 years,
Right.
you're going to have to pay it back. But if I live longer, there's going to be more money there.
There's value to it, for sure.
And this is the first time I've heard this. So nobody's talking about this. And it looks to me if there's real potential there. If you don't meet the 36, you might meet the 50,000.
Yeah.
And then you have a chance.
I'll just speak from my own perspective. If my mother had had that conversation with me, she's, I can't afford my taxes. They're getting to be too much. I'm going to have to enroll in this, and you're going to have to pay these taxes back for 4 years. Are you okay with that? I would have said, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but you need to be able to pay what you can afford.
And the person who inherits it has to be able to afford it too, otherwise they're gonna lose it.
Yeah, right.
If your heirs cannot pay what has been deferred from your debt,
Yeah.
then they're gonna lose it. That's no win-win.
But they sell your house, they're going to get.
Well, they suppose they don't want to, as we have tenants that want to have, legacy property, yeah. You don't want to sell. Everything is based on selling the property, and that's what I have an issue with. It's all based on selling the property to somebody else, but nothing that allows us to keep and stay and continue our legacy in this area. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think the solution is that the property tax relief needs to be thoroughly looked at, and reforms need to occur that's fair for everybody. So, and I acknowledge that.
Just want to say that what you've done on this issue, that I don't want to lose sight that there is things that we can do in Wake County with this appeal process. And that gentrification, as you said, it can feel like this overwhelming weight of inevitability, that there's like nothing that you can do about it, but there's things we can do. And in Orange County, we organized our property taxes. We got, big relief for 150 Black family, long-term residents in the Northside neighborhood there because of some of the same issues that went on. And last year, for the first time in 50 years, the Black population of Northside started going back up because of the property tax work, but also because of the land banking work and other things that have kept people in the neighborhood and brought back actually descendants of older residents back into the neighborhood too. So you can't let that feeling that developers and others really like, that it's inevitable, that there's nothing we can do about it, keep us from organizing.
So again, we have staff here. If you want to look at your property with an appraiser, Rob, put up your hand. Then we got Matt and Jim, they can help too. And we have Joanne and John are here. They can help you with tax relief applications if you want. Yes, sir.
I have a question, which is, as you review the variety of appeals that have come forward, to the extent that there may be common character to the appeals within a given area, will you, or is it possible that you would reevaluate your approach for that area?
Yes.
And to take the initiative to reach out to other people who did not appeal to, in some area where there is found to be some inequity.
Yeah. Let's call it a revision.
A revision, yes.
Yeah, and we do have that. And we've had, I think, about 800 of those you've adjusted so far, more than that. If we see a population of appeals in a certain area and we realize there was something flawed about our assumption or our methodology, we'll go back and we'll redo the whole area. So yes, we absolutely do that.
I'm looking at the sign-in sheet, and there are some who did not put their email addresses on here. If you did not put your email address, I need for you to put it on here, because that's how I'm going to have to share this information with you. You have home address for some don't even have that on there. So if you want us to communicate with you, I do need for you to put your email address on the sign-in sheet, and I'll leave it so you can stop by on your way out if you're not going to stay for questions. But that would be the way that I would have to, because I don't have money to mail you letters. And this is all volunteer stuff. So before you leave, make sure that I have your email address on there. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to mine, which is, can you tell us an example of where you have done such a revision at this point?
Yeah, there's been, land value is probably one of the most common. There's a neighborhood not far off NC State campus where, there was one sale doesn't make the market, but sometimes that's the best data that we have to go off if we're going back 2 years and there's only been one sale. So there was one area where land values were increased from about $40,000 to $75,000 per lot. Later in 2023, some more data came in, and several, I asked our appraisers to sort their appeals or reviews by neighborhood. So if we see a group of several neighborhoods or several appeals in one neighborhood, that's kind of a standout. Hey, let's look at this a little more closely. And so those actually had to be based off of data that came in later in 2023. Those were revised back to, I think, 20,000 less, 55,000 per lot. So, like I said, we will look at those things. It's a 2-year process. Once we get to the end of 2023, there's a whole year of more data that's come through than the beginning of 2023 when some of these areas were looked at. And I have no problem fixing things based off of new market data.
And then we proactively will mail a letter out to that homeowner and say, because of information we looked at, we've made a change and your new value is that. And those letters will be coming out April 1st as well. So if we see a trend, we're going to be proactive and we're going to make the adjustments needed based off of further information.
Just want to give a thumbs up. I actually have a lot that is an easement for the city for the sewer. And every year I've gone just an informal appeal, and they have actually taken it down. For example, I just recently got a bill for $240,000. There's nothing I can do to it, but let the city come through and work with the sewer lines there. So hopefully with that, in years past, they have acknowledged that it was overvalued, and hopefully this time they will do the same thing.
Look out for that letter coming in.
If not, make a formal appeal.
You still get another crack at it with the Board of Equalization.
Be there.
Yes, we can.